Hello and welcome to the Anglo-Italian podcast for this Euro 2024 preview on England. And I'm glad to say I've got someone of an expert in James Dewsbury who will be taking me through England and his expectations for the Euros. So, James, how are you doing? And more importantly, are you looking forward to these Euros?
I'm very well, thanks. I'm honoured that you called me an expert. I wouldn't call myself that, but that's very nice of you. I'm buzzing for the Euros, though. I'm going out there, so I
Yeah.
can't wait.
Yeah, I think we were talking offline about your bank balance, and you're reassured that it will be rewarding. Hopefully, by the end of it, we'll be talking about you and your successful trip in Germany. But I think we've kind of timed this episode at the right time because Gareth Southgate has made his final cut to the preliminary squad. He's got his 26, and it's kind of caused a few kind of uproars in terms of the kind of maybe the thinking of what Gareth Southgate is going about his business. I mean, one was forced in the likes of Harry Maguire. Unfortunately, I'm sure he would have wanted him in the squad given the kind of low defensive personnel that he's got in that team. But naturally, what has been your first reactions to this squad announcement? And do you think Gareth Southgate got the balance right?
Generally speaking, I'm quite happy. It's a 26-man squad. At the end of the day, not
Mm,
everyone's gonna be the player that you would have liked to. Not He's not going to pick the 26 that you would want to see. There are just so many different
yeah, sure.
variations. Like the chances are it's not going to happen. The one that blows my mind is Lewis Dunk. I don't really, other
Yeah.
than experience, I don't really know what he's doing in the squad. This is an England side that have just lost Harry Maguire, who's been their starting centre back for years and years and years with John Stones. And I'm
Mm,
looking at that now. I couldn't even tell you who Stone's partner is going to be. Whereas if he bought in Jared Branthwaite, which I thought he would have, that would have been my starter.
mm,
Um, it's a
yeah.
tricky one because, I mean, no Branthwaite, no Maguire. That centre back partnership is not very physical, and there are a couple of big strikers who are going to be licking their lips seeing that.
Mm,
Yeah, not ideal. No Grealish, which I'm quite happy with. Personally, I don't really think he deserved to be in the squad, and I don't think he performs overly well for England anyway. Um,
mhm.
he's a nice player to watch, but there are players there that I would have selected over him. For
Mhm.
example, Eze, he was fantastic
Yeah,
against Bosnia in Newcastle. Wonderful.
yeah,
Anthony Gordon has fully deserved his selection. But what I find quite interesting about the squad, there are a lot of new players. It's a squad that's looking to the future. I mean, I'm
mm,
looking at the squad here. You've got Mark Gahey, Ezri Konsa, um, Adam Wharton, Kobbie Mainoo,
yeah,
Gordon, Cole Palmer. So many of these Eze, so many of these players
yeah,
have single-digit caps to their name. It's a very inexperienced squad, which I'm very interested to see how it goes, really. Generally speaking, though, quite
yeah.
happy. The midfield will be, I can see it being Declan Rice. I would be surprised if Trent partnered him. I think it's likely going to be Kobbie Mainoo or Adam Wharton. I don't know what your thoughts
Yeah.
on that is, but that's what I think I select personally.
Yeah, it seems like he's gone for a balance of different minded players potentially to suit different roles. And my kind of hypothesis is that maybe he sees getting out of the group stage is the first foremost kind of element that he has to kind of achieve. But then thereafterwards, I think he may well, we may well see him experiment with certain players, which sounds a bit scary when you're going into a tournament. It's not the place to be experimenting, but I do get a sense of he may use certain personnel for certain matches. So it'll be fascinating to see how it unfolds. But let's kind of start off by talking about the man that is in charge, the man that is creating all of these divisive even kind of conversations at the moment because he's had the inevitable kind of task of trying to get this group together. And I suppose let's talk about him as personality in terms of what he brings to the setup, because I think people are a bit miffed still around what tactics and what we actually see on the pitch. But actually, let's try and focus on Gareth Southgate. What do you think he has kind of brought to this England squad that perhaps maybe previous coaches have struggled with? And Do you feel, I suppose, there was this kind of piece around him potentially entering his last tournament? Do you see that maybe changing dependent on the result?
What he's brought to this squad is actual team cohesiveness, which an England side has not had
Mm,
for years. The golden generation is
yeah,
like the perfect example. They all despised each other because of who they were playing for their club. Now these players absolutely adore each other. They've all grown up with each other in the England academy, with Gareth Southgate as well, who's always been there. He's started from I remember 2018 World Cup, he played a back five, and he's kind of progressed
mm,
from that. His football, is it interesting? No, but football in the World Cup, in the Euros, you don't really want overly interesting football because you eventually might lose in the knockout. Sorry. Um,
yeah.
I mean, England scored 13 goals last World Cup, which was I believe the third highest behind Argentina and France. Um, do I think he'll leave? Maybe. I think the next England manager will be an in-house appointment, whether it be the under 21
Mm,
coach Lee Carsley. So it's not really a question of whether I think Southgate should go. It's a question of whether I think the person should step up to the first team role, which
sure.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, there has been a lot of rumours around Lee Carsley, and potentially he's kind of maybe envisioned as the next kind of progressive coach to come through the ranks and maybe be pushed into that position. And he was talked about for the Republic of Ireland role more recently. But what I did want to allude to with Southgate is compared to previous campaigns with his kind of trusted personnel, shall we say, obviously he's gone a lot more bolder in this kind of 26-man squad. A lot, as you alluded to in the intro, a lot of new players that probably haven't had as much experience. Now, this is the thing. I suppose any bad result, he's going to be lambasted regardless. And this seems to be that catch-23 situation where he can't win regardless of what he tries to do. But I feel like there's a bit more ambition. The question mark that I do have generally, though, is his tactics, which he's always been kind of maybe lambasted in the past in terms of that in-game management, in particular for games where maybe there's been certain moves that maybe he hasn't maybe reacted as quickly, perhaps. If I allude to the last Euros with Italy, I thought we dominated the first half, but it was that kind of element that he kind of sat back and let the Italians back into the match, and that eventually allowed the Italians to grow in confidence. Do you think this will be the big test at this Euros about his in-game management as opposed to the players on the pitch?
Yeah, I do, because he has not got the defense he wants.
Mm,
It's fair to say that he's got a. I mean, Luke Shaw's in the squad, but the chances are he's going to have to play Kieran Trippier at left back. He's going to have a different centre half that isn't Harry Maguire. So that is going to be really interesting to see. I would not be surprised if he trusts his attack a lot more, because this attack has Cole Palmer, Foden, Saka, Kane, Watkins. That's over. And they've got Bellingham listed as a forward as well. That's over 100 goals in the league this season, which is quite remarkable. That's a frightening attack, really, when you think about it.
mm,
Um, so I think we're going to see something a little bit different. Um, I'm still not sure how he'll attack the bigger games, like against
mm,
France. I remember watching that game thinking that we absolutely dominated that game. I watched it back, we didn't. So many of the
yeah,
chances were from set pieces, and that's kind of
mm,
it. So yeah, that really intrigues me. As you said, at Italy, I that still blew my mind. We took the lead after 2 minutes, and we were just like, okay, we'll hold on to this now, which is such a dangerous
yeah,
game to play. And Italy, you can get at Italy. I've seen them lose to some bad nations.
yeah,
But yeah, this is a massive test. But I think, as I say, he might get away, not get away with it, because he's going to be lambasted in the media if he loses. Um,
yeah.
I do think though he will. I do think he'll go for it a little bit more than normal, because that's the progression he's kind
Hmm.
of gone with. But yeah, that's kind of what I think, really.
Yeah, I think potentially you've got the maturer players that have kind of grown with this squad. So I think there'll be some reliance on the senior players within the squad, the likes of Harry Kane, for example. However, you've got the mature kind of nature of Jude Bellingham, for example, who's still very young in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things. Phil Foden, who again is another really young, talented player. But I think we've seen him for so many seasons. We kind of assume he's almost like 26, but we still have to be reminded he's almost like 21. So that's the kind of thing that I think going into this tournament, we've got those kind of switched on tactical mindsets within the squad that know how to play the occasions. And I think that's going to be very important. And I suppose if we start talking about the squad itself, you've alluded to where we think potentially might be the weakness at the back, potentially. But if we're talking about personnel that might surprise at this tournament and maybe the ones to look out for, who's the natural ones that come to mind for you?
It's very difficult to say because I think the front four is nearly set in stone. I think it'll be Kane up top, Bellingham at the 10, Foden and Saka out wide. And I find it very hard for someone like Anthony Gordon and or Eze, even Jared Bowen, to really make a name for themselves. I feel like they're the most unknown outside of the people who watch English football. I think a lot of people know Cole Palmer just because Chelsea are a huge football team. So more or less, I'm kind of looking in that midfield and probably Adam Wharton, if he plays, which I'm not really sure. I can't say any of the defense is... There's no one to really look out for, in my opinion. I think it's Adam Wharton because he plays for Crystal Palace, but he's only just started for Crystal Palace and he's played 16 games for them. He's someone who will definitely make the step up. Whether he's one to watch out in this Euros, I'm not sure because I don't know where he's only played one game for England. I don't know where Gareth Southgate ranks him in that list of midfielders. He could be dead last behind Conor Gallagher for all I know. But if he plays, I'm going to go Adam Wharton because he is a joy to watch.
I do agree on that. I think he's got kind of Michael Carrick vibes about him, but it's just even videos that I've seen, of what he's done at Crystal Palace, breaking up the play and just does the simple passing. I think that is sometimes what you need in a tournament, someone that's just going to do the simplicity elements of the game. And that potentially helps those kind of more attacking minded players to take on their players that they're playing against. So it'll be fascinating to see how he kind of evolves that maybe style of play, especially as we've got Kobe Mainu, another one that I think is quite mature on the ball. He kind of makes it seem like a breeze at times, but yeah, he seems to be someone of more of a controlling midfielder as opposed to what Adam Wharton does in that position. And I think it's going to be fascinating, like you say. Maybe it just feels like maybe Adam Wharton's time has come at a point where maybe England need a few more games to work out what his strengths are and where he kind of fits into this squad. But yeah, I'll be fascinated to see how he performs. And for me, Eze is another one I'm really keen to see if he can come off the bench personally and just where we've got those deadlock kind of game situations, how he can maybe bring it to life. Because I think his pace and turn, but also he's just audacity sometimes. He's just got the upper strength that holds off his markers as well. So be very curious. But yeah, I suppose, James, I'm going to push you in terms of how far do we think we're going to go? And I think I want to start off by talking about the group stages themselves. And obviously, I think a lot of the media, maybe fans, expect England to breeze this group. But I still think this is going to be some tight games against the likes of Denmark, who are no pushovers, have proved it in the past. Serbia, although the confidence is fairly low, we know a few of those players that play in the Premier League or have played in the Premier League, the likes of Mitrovic, for example, and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic on his day can be really critical in that midfield for Serbia. And then we've got Slovenia, who are probably lesser known, expected to be the whipping boys in this group. Again, I suspect they will be playing for pride. So if we talk about the group stages, it should be fairly straightforward without sounding a bit arrogant about it, right?
Yeah, the group stages, I'm expecting England to top that. You're right about Serbia. That's probably the game I'm more worried about than the other two games because the physical nature of their team and that I've mentioned it, that England defense and that midfield isn't really dominating anyone physically, is it? Well, especially Serbia. You've mentioned Milinkovic-Savic. You've mentioned Mitrovic. Vlahovic isn't from there, is he? Is he? Yeah, he is. Yeah.
So there's high expectation that between the two, they could be leading the line as well.
Yeah, and that sounds like a set piece. That sounds like a set piece specialist dream. And England don't have Harry Maguire, who is unbelievable at defending set pieces. So that game is really interesting. If we lose that, I'd be interested to see how we are confidence wise. But we have such a what's it called, a mature team that I think that they'd be able to rise above that. So I'll say we finish top, but I don't think it'll be 9 points. I think it'd be 7, 6 points. I wouldn't be shocked if we lost to Serbia. I don't expect us to, but that's probably the one I'm looking out for.
And in terms of that progression out of that group stage, as we say, we anticipate them to get out of there. But how far do you think, James, England, this squad could do? Because I think outside of England, there's certainly an optimism or expectation that this England squad can make it all the way. I think people are fearful. If we look at France, they're not very confident at the moment. Italy's not the same Italy from the Euros. I think probably quality-wise, they're potentially better, but they're still like a few years behind, I would say. Spain seems to have that confidence going into this tournament, as does Portugal. And then we've got the Germany team as well that are doing, I think they're starting to pick up some momentum. And, we've got certain players that have picked up the form at the right time as well. So, yeah, that's just a few. But, I mean, how do you think England are going to progress? I mean, is it going to be down to those matchups, individual matchups?
I find it quite interesting because history would tell us that England will not even win their first knockout game. We have never won a knockout game outside of Wembley and the Stadio Olimpico. I told you that one before in the Euros, which is mind blowing. It feels very much like a new age Euros. Like you look at these squads that like the Spain are bringing, England, not so much France, but Germany as well, and Portugal. There are a lot of new players that have never played tournament football before. Like this England side, there are 6 or 7, no, even more than that have never played tournament football for England. And it's a different ball game to the league football. But individual levels, I do think we have the best squad there, maybe outside of France. But it's so hard to judge because we've been here before many times. I'm going to say, I think we can meet France in the semi-finals, and I think that's where our run will end. So I'm going to say semi-finals.
Interesting. I feel very similar, but I think it may be a team that can push themselves into the final. It all depends on the matchups. Personally, I think it's too easy to say that it's going to be that stage, but yeah, I think it's down to the teams that they play. So, James, that has been brilliant. I know it's very short in terms of discussing England even, but you've got a good trip ahead of yourself, and hopefully we'll have you back on the pods to talk about some successes along the way and maybe bringing back that Euros. But before we do send you on your way, where can people find your incredible work as well, more importantly, and yourself?
Yeah, if you love your football history, I'm probably the channel really to go to. I talk about literally all football history that you could think of. It's a bit worrying. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Dews Football, DEWSFUTBOL.
No, and definitely recommend checking out James's work. So that is your England preview. Make sure you drop a like and subscribe to this episode. But if not, keep an eye out on our other previews as we go along. So for now, thank you, James. Good luck in Germany, and we'll see you hopefully soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.